what do all of these famous celebrities have in common? Perhaps the same net worth, maybe the same home state, or maybe anything at all. And in fact there is. There's one thing they all share, and it is the fact that they are firstborns. This meaning that out of the children that their parents have offsprung, they are the oldest ones. Everyone can relate to this. Maybe you're a firstborn, perhaps you're a middle child like myself, or maybe you're the baby of the family who gets picked on a little bit. But everyone has these similarities and characteristics that apply within our lives as well as others. My family, for example, I have an older sister, a brother who is with me as a middle child, and then my younger sister, which is a lastborn. All of us understand this, and all of us have certain characteristics that apply both now and later on in life. In a few moments, let me enlighten you to something known as the birth order effect, focusing on two aspects. First, the history and research of the birth order effect, and second, many of the characteristics and adult life qualities that stem from being a firstborn or only child, middle child, and even a youngest born. But first, let's preview into the history and research. A prominent psychologist on the studies, Dr. Kevin Lehman, is a New York Times bestseller who's written many books on birth order in which his pose never changes. It's slightly leaning. It must be that golden ratio pose. But all of his books focus on why we are the way we are and how we can focus those aspects to being the most successful. But he's not the only one. Researchers from universities, psychologists, professionals, and even children's books authors have noted birth order being a firstborn, being a youngest child, and why we are the way we are. Cicely Ernst, in his book, Birth Order and Its Effect on Personality, states that research is dated back to the earliest traces of Western civilization on this fascinating subject of child development. Also, comparing Kevin Lehman's books in the 21st century to Adler's birth order theory, which stretches back to the 19th century. But now let's get into some more specifics on each individual characteristic, starting with the firstborn, pictured as my older sister. Some of the characteristics, and let me forewarn you, these are not my words, these are just the words from the culmination of research, so if you get offended, don't chase me. Some of the characteristics are perfectionist, reliable, well-organized, critical, and can all be summed up in a natural leader. This is no surprise to us. We always assume the oldest one takes the charge, the biggest go-getter, they're the one that leads the pack, if you will. Even though we might understand this, we may not understand why. The research suggests many things. First, they have a role of guardian. It seems self-evident. They supply their needs of the younger siblings, which also leads to them being sacrificial, either through time, maybe talent, and in my case, food. Also, this states that they are compliant individuals. Being the firstborn, they receive most of the parents' initial attention, which also comes with pressure. They become more compliant in order to deal with this pressure and to succeed in the way they which their parents want them to. Which leads to the final point of achieving more in their adult life. Elizabeth Hurlock states in her book on child development that because of parental pressures on firstborns to achieve, they usually succeed more than later-born siblings. Jumping into middle children, to only child, I noted Barack Obama, deliberate, high achiever, cautious, and self-motivated. Something to note about an only child is Barack Obama has an older stepsister who is 9 years older than he is, but I noted that the cycle repeats. All the studies suggest that there is a 5 to 7 year gap between if the oldest is born and the next is, if the cycle repeats, and so they would both be firstborns. And so while he technically has an older sister, he is in this case considered an only child. Now jumping to middle children, which is what I am as well as my brother, many characteristics that studies suggest are compromising, diplomatic, secretive, loyal to peers, and it can be all summed up in people pleasers. If you're a middle child like myself, you might understand this. I fully agree that I try to make it easy for everyone, try to make sure there's an equal playing field, and make sure everyone's happy at the same time. The reasoning for this is fairly simple. We're in the middle. We're too young for the older ones and we're too old for the younger ones. We have an opportunity to bridge the gap between an older sibling who might like High School Musical versus a younger one who loves Dora the Explorer. In addition, we attempt to counter the older sibling. Because they receive so much parental attention and because they have such pressure to achieve and they go far, we want to go far and we want to surpass them. And so oftentimes we'll work even harder, we'll overcompensate in order to surpass them, and sometimes that doesn't happen, which leads to us desiring additional parental awareness. Not so much wanting to be praised, but just wanting to be noticed. Often middle children say that they feel left out. Dr. Lehman does suggest that not much is known about the middle child because we're so mysterious, we're so secretive. You may not actually know our real feelings because we're going to tell you what we think you want to hear so you'll be happy. Lastly is the youngest child, noted my younger sister. This is especially where you might get offended. I repeat, these are not my words. Some of the characteristics are manipulative, charming, tenacious, affectionate, and attention seeker. For my case, my little sister, this is perfect. She is an attention seeker, she loves to be the center of attention, and she likes to be spoiled. Why this is fairly simple as well. First off, they're pampered, not just by the parents, but by each older sibling. They're taken care of, they're nurtured, as if they were all their own child. That develops to a why worry mentality. They don't necessarily have to focus on succeeding because they know the older siblings will. They don't always have to make sure they clean up the mess because they know an older sibling will come back behind them and clean it up. This, however, leads to feelings of inferiority. Oftentimes they feel underappreciated, they feel like they're not as scholastically ahead, they feel like they're not as worthy as the older siblings, which, however, can lead to stimulated chances for competition. Same thing with the middle child. They crave that attention, they crave that success, and so they work really hard, and some can even overcome. I noted the last two pictures, Bill Gates and Margaret Thatcher, two historically credible people in American and United States history. Arndt suggests in his book on birth order and influence that later borns, while lazy due to discouraged ambition, may actually overcome some of their older siblings. As I said earlier, we all fit into these categories. Whether we are a firstborn, middle child, or youngest child, now that we've begun to understand some of the history and research, I hope you can better see it in yourself or maybe in the people around you. Frank Soloway in his book, however, says that while birth order has a large effect on personality development and psychological conditions, it doesn't make up the complete entirety of a person, but is rather a fraction of the total being and merely an influence.